I'm going to show you game 3 of this remarkable clash between Alireza Firouzja and Magnus Carlsen. We've already seen that they traded wins in the first 2 games. If you haven't seen those videos, do check them out. I've recorded them already. This is game 3. It's fascinating to see the clash of styles, and once again we have Carlsen playing with d4 and he's playing main lines, and it's clear that he wants to keep things under control. He wants a clear strategic battle, whereas Firouzja wants to try and stir things up and complicate. So this is exactly the same as game 1, and if you recall, Firouzja played knight c6 in game 1, and it was wild, but Carlsen controlled it. This time castles from Firouzja, e3, so nice fixed pawn structure. That's what Carlsen likes. When the pawns are fixed, no big surprises. That's the theory anyway. Queen b3. And here, well, you might recall in the Tata Steel tournament in January, Caruana played bishop g5 against Anand, and, well, actually, wild position, Anand should have won. But knight h4, played by Carlsen, played very quickly. It's clear that he's done his homework and he's bringing his A game to this match. He's not messing around against the kid who, of course, upset him in the Banter Blitz final. But this is rapid play, or 15 minutes, and it's a little bit slower, which suits Carlsen. Can't believe I would ever hear myself say that. So the point of knight h4 was to knock the bishop off this important diagonal. And castles. So now Firouzja has to sort out his minor pieces, and because at the moment white's bishops are excellent here. So he tries knight h5 to attack the bishop, but also to attack the knight here. The bishop dropped. Good move, of course. Firouzja exchanges. So in some ways you could say he's achieved something. He's got rid of that important bishop. However, I don't think Carlsen would be too unhappy with this, because this pawn structure on the king side is super solid. Those double G pawns actually are very nice for white's king. Very hard for black to get any kind of attack on the king side. That's a bonus against Firouzja. And also the king has an escape square. Luftloch. Luft, as we say. Bishop e7 and knight f3. Knight comes back. So now it's clear that the position has stabilized. We can kind of take stock. So fixed pawn structure. Very typical for queen's pawn openings. Black would prefer it not to have that knight on c6. It'd be much better if the pawn were on c6. If we could only nudge that knight to the side and put the pawn on c6, then black would have rearranged things perfectly. But actually that knight on c6 is problematic. You know, if white can get in, let's say, rook c1, knight a4 and knight c5, then those pawns become sensitive. So knight b4, Firouzja starts to rearrange things, attacking the bishop, which comes back. Now the problem is that, you know, you would like to play c6 here, but after this, then it's possible actually to take the pawn on b7. So if we come back, here is where Firouzja starts to stir things up. He plays c5, so he's trying to liberate his pieces. Obviously, if that's taken, then d4. He's trying to create complications. a3. So again, attacking the knight, and the pawn pushes the queen out of the way. So the situation has changed again. You can see that Firouzja has started to mobilize his queenside pawn majority. Now, if he can get that b pawn to link up with the c pawn and push here, then of course black is doing very well. So that's why Carlsen meets it head on with b3. And of course, if this is taken, then strategically white is doing wonderfully. Isolated D pawn, weak B pawn here. Of course, that's not going to happen. Knight C7. Carlsen exchanges on C4, and once again there's the potential for black to push with B5 to connect those B and C pawns. So A4 from Carlsen. And if black doesn't do something quickly, then white just strategically is winning. Those pawns look ugly, and white is ready to advance those beautiful center pawns. And black would just be completely lost. Therefore, black has to react straight away. Bishop b4, good move. And again, if black doesn't play something quickly, then e4, d5 is just going to blow black away. So you've got to exchange. You've got to kick the queen out of the way and support that c pawn. So this is black's counterplay, this c pawn, and that knight does find a good square on b4. So Firouzja has managed to complicate the situation. So this is a great strategic battle. The rook goes to attack the pawn and knight b4. So the pawn is defended, knight finds a good square. But I think Carlsen would have been happy with the outcome of the opening because, you know, he's got a safe king. He's got that beautiful regular pawn structure, strong pawn structure. And now he has a clear strategic objective to try and control that c pawn and later on to push the center pawns. Firouzja is fighting hard. The rook attacked again. That pawn can't be taken, by the way, because knight f4 is a nice discovered attack and knight takes bishop check. So the rook goes back. So they've repeated the position. But Carlsen wants more than a draw. He feels things are going well. So he played knight e5. Looks good. Attacking the pawn, which is forced on. And not rook takes pawn because of knight c2, forking. So knight d3 is also a good move. You can see how if that knight is exchanged, then white is going to get close to rounding up that pawn. So Firouzja has to keep the active position, maintain the active position of the knight. And here Carlsen made a big mistake. He was moving pretty quickly. Again, this tactic of his to try to avoid serious time pressure, or at least just to get ahead on the clock. Well, in that sense, it was working. He had more time than Firouzja, but he made a mistake here. He could have played knight c5, and that breaks the connection here. And after c2, it looks as though that is actually good for white, rounding up this pawn. There's still some complications there, but it should be good for white. Instead, Carlsen played the very tempting move, rook b1. Pinning looks good. In fact, pawn to c2 here is a strong move, and after rook b2, then queen a6, very unusual move, actually gives black some very nice counter chances. Because if knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, attacks the queen, and attacks this one here. So rook b1 just played, but Firouzja missed his chance. He played another very tempting move, bishop f5. I mean, this looks very nice with this pin, but in fact after this, well, this pin is more important. And in fact, it is black that is losing that c-pawn. c2 played, but that can just be taken. And you can see that pin is the decisive thing here. If knight takes bishop, this is important. Queen takes rook, check. And rook takes queen, winning. So after this, Firouzja played queen c6. And now an excellent move from Carlsen. He played bishop f5, preventing the rook coming to c8. And you can see how white doesn't have any problems on the back rank here. That king has that nice escape square, so there's no no tricks here. I know that C1 of course is covered anyway, but still that it does make a difference to the position. So that bishop still covers C8 and is about to come around to, well, F3 or E2 as well. So Firouzja was just thrashing around by this point. Rook C3, taking control of the C file, and now the bishop can lock itself on that square B5. So another excellent square for the bishop. Not only looking down here, but also potentially covering the king as well. Now, rook c8. Yeah, probably, well, who knows? Rook t8 probably would have been stronger. At least it would have put up more resistance. After this, you feel that Carlsen, well, it's not too complicated. I know knights are tricky, but Carlsen has it under control. He could push forward with e4 here, but that's sort of not in the spirit of rapid play. You know, you want to make sure everything is under control first before you launch your pawn. So therefore, Carlsen played queen d2. So the watchword here in his play is solidity, super solid. Just hold everything, move quickly, hold everything before you advance. That's the practical approach. So now f3 prepares, of course, e4 soon, and the king steps up. h5, yeah, still could be a little bit tricky. In fact, I was surprised at this moment that Firouzja didn't try h4. I felt that was kind of his last chance, because in this position, well, of course, white still has everything under control, but the king is a little bit more exposed. But in this position, after queen c3, king here, things went very well for Carlsen. His next move was superb, actually. Queen c4, excellent. A good practical move. He knows that the endgame will present no difficulties for white at all. In complete control. So after this move, he starts to look at the king side. Now, if the queen goes back, then, well, the pawns will come forward. But, okay, queen takes pawn. Last chance, really. Can Firouzja stir things up? Does he have some hit against the king? Let's have a look. Queen f6. Good move. Protecting the pawn. Threatening mate in 1. That's key. So the king has to go back, and now queen e5. Again, the bishop versus knight ending totally winning for white. And if the queen goes back, here's the point. Carlsen realizes that he can turn his attention to black's king, and the combination of the d pawn and the attack with queen and bishop is just too much for black. Well, Firouzja checked on c2, and now the king runs around to this lovely safe square. And now Carlsen can fully concentrate on the attack on the king. And that was the final move of the game. Firouzja resigned, understandably. Well, it's basically mate in 2. Queen g8 and queen h8 mate. Not a lot to be done about that one. Let's just see it on the board. Knight takes pawn, queen g8 check, queen h8, checkmate. So that was the third game, giving Carlsen a 2-1 lead. He just needed to draw the fourth to win the match, and he succeeded in doing that. He played very solidly in that fourth game, and Firouzja really couldn't make any progress. Didn't lay a glove on him. So I'm sure Carlsen was mightily relieved to win that match. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. And if you want to support us, we'd be very grateful. Do check out the links to PayPal or patreon.com PowerPlayChess. You'll find those links in the description below. Thanks for watching.